The West Virginia Mountaineers had their first scrimmage of fall camp leading up to the 2023 football season, and Coach Neal Brown met with the media today to talk about it. I'm going to go over some of the highlights from that press conference and give you my thoughts right after a word from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation, and welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up another shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we are breaking down Coach Brown's press conference after Monday's practice, which also included results and some information about this past Saturday's scrimmage, which was closed to the media. So really, until today, nobody knew a whole lot. But first, before we get into it, guys, you'll see scrolling along the bottom of the screen there are my club level VIP members here at Couz's Corner. If you want to be a member of that exclusive club, hit the join button right below this video. It's an easy way to support the show, and there are a few perks that go along with it that you'll be able to access. And later in the show, I'll show you my pub level VIP members, which is the introductory level here at Couz's Corner VIPs. Let's dig in. All right. My immediate reaction to Coach Brown's presser. First of all, Coach Brown, you could tell going into this presser as it started, he's feeling a major sense of urgency right now, and as he should. There's a lot of pressure on, not only for him and his staff to win and win now, but also the fact they have a top 10 rated team on the road to open the season. The AP poll just came out today. Penn State is ranked number 7 in the country, and so it couldn't get much tougher for this Mountaineer team going into week 1. And he wants to make sure they're up for the challenge. So he's putting a lot of pressure on them this week. He's being hard on them this week to get them ready. And it's also an opportunity for guys who are in position battles to separate themselves from the rest of the pack, so that they can get an idea who their starters are going to be going into their game prep. Now, when talking about the offense, we're going to kind of go position by position here. But you see, the quarterbacks. We'll start with the quarterbacks. He didn't say a whole lot. Once again, just as he has done every press conference, he mentioned Nico first. I don't know if that means anything. It may mean nothing at all, but he mentioned Nico first, and he said that they were doing some situational work with quarterbacks. Nico made some really good plays on 2-minute situations, but he also mentioned again that Nico made some bad decisions, which we've heard coaches talk about how that's the number one thing they grade when determining quarterbacks is who makes least amount of bad decisions, who's better in decision making. Right now, that appears to be Garrett Green because he said Garrett was solid in his decision making and looked solid in that scrimmage on Saturday. That's really about all he said. Now, when he talked about the running backs, they didn't do a whole lot with C.J. Donaldson for obvious reasons. Didn't want to overwork him. He said Jaheim White continues to look good. He's especially good away from the ball and the blocking and whatnot, which is impressive for a freshman, a true freshman. He talked about Jalen Anderson once again looked really good, but he stressed that Jalen Anderson has got to get in shape and get ready for games. Apparently, right now he's not in shape. We all know when Jalen Anderson got to West Virginia, that was really the one thing that kept him from getting on the field sooner. Was he got there a little bit out of shape. It took him a while to get into shape. So that might be something he struggles with. Everybody's different. Everybody's body is different. So it might be a little bit harder for Jalen to get into shape than some of these other guys. But, man, when he can flat out make people miss, and he's a really good running back. He said Justin Johnson has probably been the most consistent running back through fall camp and once again looked good during the scrimmage, especially when it came to blocking. Talking about wide receivers, he said Traylon Ray was the leading receiver of the scrimmage. And as a freshman, he is expected to participate and be a factor in this offense, even as a true freshman, even though he only got there, I think, late June. So he's only been on campus not even 2 months yet and is already going to be a contributor for this team. And also talked about Hudson Clement and Preston Fox. So both of those guys also stood out during the scrimmage on Saturday. Now, as far as the tight ends go, he said they looked okay blocking, but they didn't really throw the ball a lot. They did not pass the ball a lot, apparently. In this scrimmage on Saturday, they were pretty much working on the run game to improve their tackling and just get the defense ready. And maybe that's, I know he's saying they're not preparing for Penn State, and we know he's been putting a stress on tackling, but and I'll talk about this more when I get into my season preview episode. But man, Penn State has some really good running backs, so that might be factoring into his decision here as to why he's focusing on the run game right now in camp, is because he knows what's coming in game one. And if they're not good tacklers and they're not ready to face good running backs, it's going to be a long night on September 2nd. The reporters asked about the offensive line. Some comments he made about the offensive line. Number one, he talked about true freshman Johnny Williams. We all know it's very rare for a true freshman lineman to come in and be ready to play year one. Well, Johnny Williams is ready to play, and he said he will play probably as a true freshman. He said they would like to redshirt him, but he's a player, and he's probably going to play. Uh, he also talked about Nick Malone. He's making a lot of progress. Bryce Biggs is another one that's making progress, and then Landon Livingston has made some progress as a backup center. He said Landon Livingston is not ready to play yet, but he is getting better. The two guys he mentioned that he needs to see more from are redshirt freshmen Sullivan Weedman and Mo Hamilton, two redshirt freshmen on that offensive line that he says need to take the next steps. And when it comes to the right guard spot between Jaquay Hubbard and Brandon Yates, he said there has not been a decision made there yet. Both guys will probably play. He's not sure yet who the starter will be. It probably may be some type of rotation like last year, but it won't be 50-50 like last year. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the three things they've been focusing on are alignment, physicality, and getting to the football. Now, we all know with alignment, I was at that Kansas game last year, folks. I saw it with my own eyes. These players, there were a lot of plays. They weren't even lined up in the right spots, and you could tell it before the play started. There were a lot of guys pointing at each other. There were guys holding up their arms like, I don't know what to do. Don't know what my teammates are doing. You could just sense the confusion on the field. You can almost see it from the bleachers, from the stands. Well, he says right now their alignment looks good. The guys are lining up where they're supposed to be, so that's a step in the right direction. As far as the physicality piece, one thing he's stressing right now is tackling. Obviously, they've been tackling a lot more in camp than they did last year. They tackled more in the spring than they did last year because last year they erred on the side of caution when it comes to safety, and it hurt them come game time. They were not a good tackling team last year, and it really had a negative impact on their defense. So this year they're tackling more. They're tackling to the ground a lot more than they have in the past, and I personally think it's a great decision. The teams that tackle to the ground the most in practice typically are the better tackling teams. I know you are risking getting guys hurt, but it's just a risk you have to take. This is football, man. It's a physical game. It's a game where you have to be able to tackle guys, and if you don't do it enough at practice, then it is not going to translate to games. I don't care who you are, and I just think, especially when you open the season with a team like Penn State, you have got to be able to tackle. So working on that, but when it comes to that, he says the guys need to do a better job of running their feet when tackling. And what he means by that, I think, as someone who played football in the past, I think he means when you tackle somebody, you're taught to drive your feet through the tackler or through the player as you tackle them. Drive them into the ground with your feet. You can't just go up to the guy and stop moving your feet and wrap your arms around him and arm tackle. You've got to drive your feet through the guy and get him to the ground. And I think that's what he means by that. I've never heard it phrased that way, but I think that's what he's referring to. He said they need to do a better job of that. He said they are doing a pretty good job of running to the ball and getting hats to the football, which is good, which is the other thing they've been focusing on. And one thing he stressed to this team when it came to their tackling and their physicality, they are not easing into this season. They have got a really good football team coming up week one, so there's no time for them to ease into this. They have got to be ready to go, ready to tackle, ready to be physical. Game number one, game numero uno against the Penn State Nittany Lions, a top 10 team in the country. They have got to be ready to go. That's why there's a sense of urgency. That's why there's a lot more physicality at practice. That's why he's being harder on these guys. He knows what this season means. He knows what this first game means, how tough it's going to be, and he needs his guys to be ready. They have to be ready. Okay. Now, talking about the individual positions, D line, first of all, apparently Sean Martin's a little banged up because the press asked him about that. So Sean, I don't know. Apparently he didn't participate in the scrimmage. I'm not sure, but he said it's nothing serious. Sean will practice some this week, and he's not worried about him going into game one. He said as far as the defensive line goes, he mentioned the nose guard position, Mike Lockhart, Fatorma Mulba, some of those guys, they have got to get in better shape, and he said they will get there. That's what these practices are for. But he mentioned running backs and nose tackles are two positions where guys have to play themselves into shape. You can do all the running and conditioning you want, but until you actually put pads on and get into live action, it's not the same. And those are two positions where it really matters the most. And he said, as far as the defensive line goes, they're going to have to do that by committee this year. They're not going to have a Dante Steele up front like they did last year. They will go 9 to 11 deep, so they will be able to rotate guys in and out, which is good. So they have plenty of depth at that position. And he said they have looked good so far this fall and looked good in the scrimmage on Saturday. The linebacker position, he said they are a work in progress. It's another position he's putting a lot of pressure on the guys, especially when it comes to communication. They still have a lot of work to do, but the one guy he really talked about glowingly was Trey Lathan. He said Trey Lathan has looked really well. He said Trey Lathan looked really good in the scrimmage on Saturday, and he said he might have looked better than anybody out there today on Monday at practice. He talked about Trey. He said Trey has all the physical tools. He's just really young and really inexperienced. So he said he will be able to do it, but he needs him to get there fast. He needs him to get ready fast. So that just based on what he's saying about Trey Lathan, it looks to me like Trey Lathan might be kind of moving ahead of the other guys at that spot, maybe earning himself that starting position there at that weak side wheel linebacker spot. Time will tell on that, but it looks like Trey Lathan might be the leader in the clubhouse to get the nod there. He talked about Aubrey Burks, another guy getting pressure put on him, especially when it comes to communication there in that secondary. Him being the safety, he's the quarterback of the defense back there to a degree. He said Aubrey's looked good in camp. Also, he said Andrew Wilson Lamp, Benny Bishop has made some really good plays. He continued to talk about how well Anthony Wilson has looked, the transfer from Georgia Southern. Said he looks really good and said he's been a good addition to this team. When talking about special teams, something I don't really talk about here enough, and I want to focus on it today. Michael Hayes made a really good kick during the scrimmage on Saturday. The kickoff team was not as good as he'd like them to be, but the kickers did a good job getting the ball into the end zone, which is another thing they didn't do well last year. Not enough touchbacks last year. They expect to do much better at that in 2023. The kickoff return team, he said, looked pretty good. Benny Bishop and Jaheim White had some nice returns. He said, and backup punter Leighton Bechtel actually has looked really good. So Oliver Straw, if something would happen to Oliver Straw, he would go down. It looks like we got a pretty reliable backup there at the punter spot. Benny Bishop and Preston Fox, he said, had some nice punt returns on the day. He said that unit is continuously improving, but needs to continue to get better. We all know that's been a weak spot of this team for the last several years, even really going back to Dana's last few years here. That punt return team has not been good. They did improve some last year, but they have to get even better this year, and he thinks they're going to do that. It looks like special teams are shaping up to be a pretty decent force. Our coverage teams last year were actually pretty good. It was our return teams that struggled last year on the special team side, but they're trying to shore up that this year before they get into week 1 against Penn State, which could go a long way in helping West Virginia have a chance in that game. So I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Couz's Corner family, what are your takeaways from Coach Brown's first presser from that since their scrimmage on Saturday? Couz's Corner family, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about this press conference? What are your takeaways from the press conference? If you have to, go watch the presser. I'll leave a link to it in the description box. You can watch it, come back, and then leave your comment. But I want to know what you thought about Neal Brown's press conference, your takeaways from the scrimmage, and also who do you think ends up winning the quarterback job for the Mountaineers going into 2023? I want to hear your thoughts on that as well. It's been many years since the Mountaineers started game 1 with a quarterback they recruited out of high school. It's been at least a decade since West Virginia started a high school recruited quarterback in game 1. That's a long time, folks. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, how it turns out. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited regardless of which one of these guys start. Selfishly, I'd like to see Garrett Green start because I think he's earned it. But at the end of the day, I just want to see this team win, and I want to see the best man win the job. That being said, I ask for your support here on the channel. If you want to support me absolutely free, there are 4 ways you can do it. You can hit that thumbs up button, which is give this video a like if you like this content. You can subscribe to the channel, help me get to my next big goal of 10,000. You can share it out with your family and friends, and you can drop that comment below. All that helps the YouTube algorithm and helps me grow my channel. If you want to support me financially, folks, I mentioned the memberships early in the video. Other ways you can support my channel. I have a merch store. You can check out my merch store by clicking one of the photos below, or there's a link to a Fanatic store as well in the description box. You can do your Fanatic shop. If you don't want to buy the item shown, when you click the link, all that does is get you into the site. Whatever you buy during that shopping experience, I will get a small commission from the sale, and you'll be helping me out here on the channel. You can make a one-time donation. If you like what I served you up here today at Couz's Corner, you can leave me a tip by hitting that heart button with a dollar sign in the middle, called the thanks button. I like to call it my tip jar. You can leave me one of those as well. With that being said, I really appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and until the next one, you country roads.